So did you obviously felt very different for that Olympic final than the Beijing Olympic final? What are your memories of the London race?
So I felt real certainty that we were capable of being the fastest crew, and that we could and should win the race, and that it was up to us to do what we knew worked. So like I said, in Beijing, I was still casting around for things and not knowing where the standard was, whereas I felt that in London we were setting the standard, and if we met our own standards, no one would be able to match that. And we felt that we had so many weapons. We talked about so many different scenarios. If the Australians are here or there, or if somebody throws something unexpected at us, what's the call going to be? What's the response going to be? What are the circumstances where we're going to do an up for at halfway, and what's it going to take if. And so we just felt on the start line that we got to do the plan, and the plan was good enough, but I was going to enjoy it. I remember that it was raining, and I was fretting that my hands were going to slip on the oars, like little things like that. And I remember wrestling in my own head that just to keep the thoughts that we practice to be the thoughts in your head. You want to set the start line, as Martin, just thinking about the first stroke and how you're going to execute that and finishing that one off, and stop thinking about your hands being wet. That kind of thing. And I remember being relieved because I'd had caffeine gel, and I'd had one before the heat, and I'd felt really sick, and then I had one in the final, and I thought I'm going to feel sick again from the caffeine gel, but I didn't, and it turned out the one I'd had for the heat was out of date. It's really stupid thing to do in the Olympics. So I was just relieved to not feel sick and to be there in our boat. I remember there was a crosswind, and so they'd redrawn the lanes, and we played that game in our heads that you do, where if we get the outside, if we get the edge lane, that's brilliant because that's the most sheltered lane, and if we get one lane in, that's brilliant because we're in the middle of the race and we've got boat either side, and you're playing all those little mental tricks to put yourself in the best possible place. I remember going off the start, and you got the Catherine's extra something, her biggest race of both of our lives, and we were up still in the 40s going through 250 no matter what I called. I don't think she even feels it, but it was a great 42. There was a rhythm there, and kind of knew that it was good, and we were out. And then we eventually came on to more of a sustainable mid-race pace, and we moved away a little bit. And then there's a logical part of your brain going, it's all right, we're out the start first, we're moving away, we know we've got a good sprint, feel good, and so this part's going, it's fine. Like normal race, you think we've got this, but it's not a normal race. It's Olympics. You think you can't take anything for granted. So they really threw the Australians really threw what they had at us in the third 500, and felt them come back at us, and we had to respond to that. But we did respond to that, and I felt like they closed on us. But when you looked at the times, we actually matched it. So we came through 1,000 and 1,500 with the same distance apart. And then we got into where the grandstands were, and you just felt like you were going into a stadium. The stands are so high, and the sun had come out, and everybody's like banging their feet on the metal stands, and you can sort of feel this rumble coming across the water. You almost physically feel it in the handles. And I'm calling, but I don't know if Katherine can hear any of it. And the last 15 strokes where we were up, I remember just thinking, just bottle it. I just wished that I could press record and bottle for forever everything that I could see and feel at that moment. Katherine didn't do that. She hadn't taken it. She was going for every stroke to make sure, but I enjoyed the last 15 strokes.
Wow. And the whole thing of being Olympic champion, you must have loved that in London and the second week of the games. And
it was really special. I mean, it was super special because then we had Kat and Sophie and Heather and Helen as well.
yeah.
And so there were 6 of us. We moved into a flat in the Olympic Village together, those 6 of us. So we could really let our hair down. We went on the Sunday night, a couple of days after the race, we got invited to the beach volleyball. We walked into this, this corporate do with tables and dinner, and the whole room kind of stopped and then started singing Spandau Ballet to us. It was like, and we went out and watched the volleyball and got picked up by the cameras and then invited down onto the sand to play a few points at half time. Oh, yeah. All of that. Yeah. I honestly wanted like a GoPro stuck to my head for a week.
Was that sort of thrill of the Olympics, was that what drew you back to the sport after you'd stepped out for 2016?
No, it was the identity thing. I'm a rower, wanted to be a rower. I wasn't rowing. I was being a mum. I was sitting in playgroup singing nursery rhymes. Didn't feel very me. Obviously love the boys, but it can be a bit boring. I just wanted to feel like myself again, I think, and thought if I'm racing and doing that, that's me. So that's what I should be doing. It's really
how long did you feel that for?
So it started when I got back on the ergo, getting fit again after having Richard, and it doesn't take me ever long when I'm on an ergo to start getting ridiculous ideas. It still happens now. I think, oh, what's the 30 to 39-year-old ergo records? And then I think, oh no, there's still people competing. Well, I'll have to wait till I'm 40. So that got me, think, oh, I'm not that unfit. I can pull some decent scores. And it went through to training back with the squad, as you know, and going on camps and doing trials and so on, right up until I had to call it a day. And then after that, I've been able to be much more at peace with it since then. Yeah.
Why I never quite understood. Well, I kind of got part of it, why you had to call it a day, whether it was, well, why?
So there was multiple reasons. The straw that broke the camel's back there was boat speed. We did a doubles matrix in the winter and I did really badly. So every double that I was in lost. And I'd been really struggling to get the top end, the explosive power and stuff. I just hadn't had it in any races. I could do the longer stuff okay. But I couldn't, and it was I think it was 50% physical because I hadn't had a racing season the summer before, and it'd just been so long since I'd done high intensity stuff. I'd missed the Christmas trial because my back hadn't held up for that, and so we're doing this racing in the winter, and it was just the first like proper flat out stuff that I'd done since 2012, so nearly 4 years ago. And then the other thing was it's the hunger and how brutal you want to be about it. I remember racing against Mel Wilson, and she's a good friend, and she's a cracking rower, and she'd been, rowing the squad for a decade, and she hadn't got her medals. And I remember thinking, I don't want it as much as Mel does. Like Mel needs it more than me. I've got my gold. And so I just didn't have I don't have that ruthless edge to kind of, you've got to want to take it off people a bit. You've got to want it.
So did you
not care if you have it instead of them? But I've gone I did care.
Did you walk then, or were you pushed at all, or did you walk?
Well, I was dropped from the double group after that doubles matrix, and so then I could look at the quad or the 8. And
do you wish you'd stayed for the 8 now?
No.
Ah.
I should say. Then there was all that trouble with Vicky and Catherine having a few bust ups and stuff, and so there was another phone call to say, are you still fit? But it was too late by then.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was the double. That was the dream, to go back and defend the title. And I could have gone in another boat and not won a gold medal, but I didn't. It wasn't for that result, for that prize, it wasn't worth what I was putting everyone else through. And that was the other part of it. There were things were hanging together at home. It's hard, and the boys were. Richard wasn't quite 1. William was just 2. There was a lot of being up at night, and Ollie was holding the fort. And if it had been going for my first gold medal or something, I could have asked that. But once that wasn't, I wasn't at that standard. If I couldn't get a seat in the double, then I wasn't at that standard. So it wasn't worth asking what I needed to ask of people to let me do it. That was what it was. Yeah.
So we're talking on the day that the press release has come about Helen Glover stepping back into the sport as a mum of is it 3 kids she's got, and you've had a phone call from Helen Glover about I guess to ask some advice about how things like this happen and go.
Yeah, so we spoke to her in the first lockdown, actually, in the summer, because I was really aware that her kids were then at the same age that mine were when I decided to go back. And I thought, bet she's on the ergo, bet she's feeling a bit trapped, because you do anyway with little kids that age. And I know what she's like. And so I just sent her a message, just a text to say how you doing. Thinking of you, basically, with little kids in the lockdown. And she texted back saying, I've been meaning to chat to you, I've got some ideas. So yeah. So we had this big chat back then, and I went through everything, how it had been going back, what training I'd done, what training that I wished I'd done, like what I'd needed to have done if it was going to work. And
what was that like? What did you say?
We said, like, I'd really noticed the lack of intensity and the lack of a racing season. And, I'd really felt that I would have needed 2 years. So I was trying to come back and won like she is, and wished I'd done some racing or some harder ergos or something the summer before to be ready. And also just all the stuff that made it super challenging around training camps and being away from the kids during training camps, and who's going to look after them then, and who's going to look after them if they get ill, because that happened to me, that they both got ill at the same time. So Ollie was in hospital with one who wasn't well at all with lung thing, and our nanny Siobhan, who wasn't supposed to be a nighttime person, was looking after the other one. And it, my baby's at home without a parent and he's ill.
yeah.
So that sort of thing. So we've had a really honest chat, and an honest chat about the motivation stuff and how much you want it and how much you're prepared to do it if you can't be Olympic champion and those kind of things. So hopefully that sort of helped her and prepared her thinking.
Do you think it says anything about where the standard of the British squad is now, that she's able to come back in just a few months off the Olympics with a potential chance to make the team?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the squad it goes in cycles, and at the moment, this cycle it's lost a lot of people, and there's a lot of new people, there's a lot of changes in the squad at the moment with coaching and so on. So from that point of view, you can look at it. Someone like Helen could walk in without much training, but on the other hand, she's going to be a massive asset. She's so good psychologically, and her discipline and standards are so high. She's bound to have a positive effect
Yeah.
on the team, and them to have her to look up to and to follow, I think will make a really big difference. So that's good. I also think there's always been, if you look at it, anybody who was at the actual top of the squad could easily get in the bottom of the squad when they're less than their best.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, you could, Martin. You could trotted in.
I was looking
at 95% fit, couldn't you?
yeah, maybe. Touch wood. I was looking at women who have had babies and come back, and looking at Kirsten van der Kolk, who came back. You'll know, who was in the lightweight women's double that won in Beijing, and then Ekaterina Karsten, Sunita Puspure is another one who's come back in the single and won the world title. For you, Bjerreksson, she hasn't quite retained the form, but she's come back in the single. I mean, how possible do you think it is for a mum to come back within the British system as it stands, the Caversham system? Because I'm thinking the Dutch are kind of quite fluid and flexible about, pushing the babies down the bank while, your mum's out rowing on the Bosbaan or something like that. Do you think, how possible is it to work in the British system as a mum?
So I did feel when I was going back that everybody was bending over backwards, because I think there was a feeling that it ought to be possible. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do to make it happen? I mean, there's some unavoidable stuff with rowing, which is if you're in a crew boat, can you be there giving less than the others? Like, if it's the biggest thing in their lives, can it be not the biggest thing in your life? Which is, I think, why people do end up in the single. But then, the interesting thing is the dads do it, don't they? And is it the biggest thing in their lives or not? I don't know. I haven't had that conversation. Haven't had that conversation with them. I don't like being in a situation where you do less than your best. And I think if you're rowing and you're a mum, you are at 90% in both things. And that, and for Helen, that's probably good enough, because she's, her 90% is probably other people's 150%. But I didn't like that feeling. Yeah.
I have to ask you a little bit about Tomo, because your coach is now no longer chief coach. He's working with China. How did you read that situation and him moving into a different job, moving out of Caversham? It seems that there's a very much a different approach now in the Caversham system.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot been happening across sport in general, hasn't there? A shift to lots of focus on well-being and how do we do this? And that's not just focus on what the result is, but how it's achieved and how people are looked after and so on. And I think I have mixed feelings about that process, because I think that a lot of athletes, do struggle psychologically, and it's really difficult to tease out what's sort of necessary and what's not, because you can't get there without any suffering and without any learning and without being in a structure, and sometimes without being put in uncomfortable situations and being put under pressure and so on. Some of that is necessary, and some of that would happen starting out in work or whatever. You might have a boss you didn't get on with, and difficult situations, and you might end up leaving for another organization. So I think it's really hard to segregate what is necessary for success and what and what is not. I think Tomo, he's a strong character. He's also ambitious. I think he wants autonomy, and within the British system, with Jürgen and David there, he wasn't going to have it. And then I think when David left, Tomo was looking for a bit more, he wanted a bit more control over things, and he wasn't given that, and so he went looking for it elsewhere. And there probably was a bit of a cultural clash with his way versus a sort of more gentle listening approach. And I can see why, it's gone that way. But I know I would want to coach me, if I wanted to win.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking now for well over an hour and 10 minutes. It seems to have just gone just like that. I'm thinking, what's your view on the future for you and the family, for yourself and for Ollie? How optimistic are you?
For life in general?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still really optimistic. You know, it's a bit pants, isn't it, with the pandemic? But it will finish. This too will pass. I think springtime and summertime will all be fine. The boys are young enough that it's not affecting their mental health or anything too much. They, they've got each other to play with. They play Mario Kart online with their friends. You know, still shout at other little boys for for chunks of time. So we're fortunate now, and I think like long term, Ollie's happy. He's been doing simulations for Ineos for the American Cup. So super happy. So in our house, we're into the America's Cup. Like if there's a race, it's on at 7 o'clock in the morning. We wake up, see what's happened, then read all the news reports and get dead excited about that. He's all over that. I think for me, I'm in a phase of life where the kids are small and we're quite content, and I'm doing some bits and bobs, and that's fine. But I do think like one day in the long term, I would love to be back in sport in a kind of role where I can figure out stuff about performance again. What's going to I don't necessarily coaching, maybe sort of more on the performance director sort of side. I love the idea of that. I don't know whether it will ever fit in. It's not right for now, but
you'd be a great
little spark there.
You'd be a great performance director, Anna.
Oh, Martin, so kind.
Yeah. Just finally, do you think the Olympics are going to happen this year?
Oh, honestly, no.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think that the IOC obviously massively want it to happen and will make it happen at almost any cost, but then their income is based on broadcast.
Yeah.
I don't think the organising committee in Tokyo, they don't want to have it to happen at any cost because their income's based on tickets.
Yeah.
They haven't got the public support. I just can't, it just seems like there's not much time between now and then. Things have got to change a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, things have got to change a lot. I think I'm with you on that one, Anna.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. Yeah.
We've got to end on a positive note because it's been the most delightful time spent chatting with you. You're such a positive person. It's a real sort of radiator of energy. And it's been great to spend this time with you.
Thanks, Martin. Well, I'll tell you the positive thing then. My little 7-year-old, if you want another Watkins, he's on the monkey bars. He does like 40 without stopping and he doesn't feel pain. So I think the Rowan genes are safe for a while, yeah.
That's the next one. Standing on the bank watching your kids. You've got that one to come.
Yeah.
Anna, we'll end the live part of the broadcast there just to say it's been amazing. Thank you ever so much, Anna.
Thanks, Martin. Really enjoyed talking to you.